Headlines. Investigation report shows India's antitrust authority found that Google abused the dominant position of Android in India to illegally hurt competitors. Google abused the dominant position of its Android operating system in India using its huge financial muscle to illegally hurt competitors. Domestic Indian competitors in India. And if you follow us every day, you know Modi don't play that. Modi ain't down with these big foreign tech companies pushing around their future unicorns. So Google better be careful with them sharp elbows on the basketball court, because they can find themselves in a whole bunch of regulation red tape real quick. They might even be visited by a whole bunch of nicely dressed tough guys down at their HQ. little welcome party. Might be
as Dave calls them, the big heavies.
Yeah, the big heavies. Come down to office, talk with you, have some tea with you, and yeah, you're gonna have those very nice Indian gentlemen come down and show you how to make a real nice curry.
You know when you screwed up when they send the gurkhas.
So, yeah, Google's got to be careful. So let's see what this article says. It says, antitrust findings latest setback for Google in India. Google also leveraged Play Store dominance. Just like Korea. That's your app store. You're using your app store dominance inside of your operating system, Android, which looks like... I remember when Korea made their ruling that basically they can't force their own payment systems inside of their own app stores, and it was rather obvious that India is going to do this next, and that could be this. It says very specifically, talks about Play Store dominance. Google under antitrust investigation since 2019. Google abused the dominant position of its Android operating system in India using its huge financial muscle to illegally hurt competitors, the country's antitrust authorities found in a report on its 2-year probe seen by Reuters. Google reduced, quote unquote, the ability and incentive of device manufacturers to develop and sell devices operating on alternative versions of Android. Where was that exactly the same? Very similar to... same as Korea. Korea was saying our handset manufacturers, which in the case of Korea are Samsung, previously the world's biggest until just a few months ago, and LG, by no means a small smartphone manufacturer. And as when we read that headline, I don't know, on Monday, 7 days ago, that Korea said nearly verbatim the same thing, that the handset manufacturers are not able to use the version of Android that they would like to use, that Google has a special little side contract that forces them to limit their creativity with how they implement Android, which is open source. So they should be able to monkey with it to their heart's content. And yet Google comes along and says, not so fast. Here's a little side contract to make your version of Android compliant with all of the other versions of Android. And then Korea said, you can't do that. And now here's India saying the ability of device manufacturers, which India has device manufacturers, to develop and sell devices operating on alternative versions of Android. That's what specifically Samsung would like to do, which they make no mistake. Here's what's going on in the background. These politicians have no clue what's going on. What's going on is the hardware manufacturers, the smartphone manufacturers in Korea, namely, again, Samsung and LG, went to their boss, the government, and said, hey, these Google dudes are forcing us to use a version of Android that is not what we would like to do, but we don't have a choice, and it gives them a bunch of power. And make no mistake, the same thing's happening in India with the smartphone manufacturers tell their government, and that's why the wording is nearly verbatim to what the Korean court said, which is Google's forcing them to use a restrictive version of Android, which is a little peculiar because Android's open source. You should be able to do whatever you want to Android. You can tweak that code all you like. And so, but no, Google says, not so fast. If you're going to use Android, if you want our app store in your version of Android, then you're going to have to comply with how we restrict you and how you can utilize Android. So now the Indian government and the Korean government are both kind of pushing back on that. It says the U.S. tech giant told Reuters in a statement it looks forward to working with India to demonstrate how Android has led to more competition and innovation, not less. Typical Google response, nearly identical to what they said in the Korean case as well. That but we know what's best, and it's a net positive. And it's good for you, and you're winning. What are you complaining about? Essentially, Google has not received the investigation report. A person with direct knowledge of the situation has told Reuters. India did not respond to a request for comment on the report, Cheryl. Senior CCI members from India will review the report and give Google another chance to defend itself before issuing a final order, which could include penalties, said another person familiar with the case. Google would be able to appeal any order in India's courts. Its findings are the latest antitrust setback for Google in India, where it faces several probes in the payment, app, and smart television markets. The company has been investigated in Europe, the US, and elsewhere. This week, South Korea's antitrust regulator fined Google $180 million for blocking customized versions of Android. Yep, as promised. Google submitted at least 24 responses during the probe, defending itself, arguing it was not hurting competition. The report says Microsoft, Amazon, Apple, as well as smartphone manufacturers like Samsung and Xiaomi were among 62 entities that responded to India's questions during the Google investigation. The report says, all the Android hardware makers are going to unify because they're all suffering the same scenario. And Android powers 98% of India's 520 million smartphones, according to, which is roughly the same number. Yeah, we calculated that iPhone was 3%, if I remember the data correctly. Cheryl? Yes, iPhone, according to this, it's 2% because it says Android's 98. Amazing that iPhones are only 2%, but when India ordered the probe in 2019, it said Google appeared to have leveraged its dominance to reduce device makers' ability to opt for alternative versions of its mobile operating system and force them to pre-install Google apps. Right. It does. The 750-page report finds the mandatory pre-installation of apps amounts to imposition of unfair competition on device manufacturers in violation of India's competition law, while the company leveraged the position of its Play Store app to protect its dominance. Play Store policies were one-sided, ambiguous, vague, biased, and arbitrary, while Android has been enjoying its dominant position in licensing operating systems for smartphones and tablets since 2011. The probe was triggered in 2019 after two Indian junior antitrust research associates and a law student filed a complaint. India remains a key growth market for Google. It said last year it would spend $10 billion in the country over 5 to 7 years through equity investments and tie-ups, its biggest commitment to a key growth market. Yeah, because it's the biggest English-speaking democracy. It's the biggest market in the world, period. Because China's not a market for Google. Google doesn't really do business in China. Thus, India is their biggest market. So, and lest anyone forgot, the CEO of Google is Indian himself. So, it will be interesting to see how this plays out. Stay tuned. There will be updates probably as soon as early next week. The second biggest story is from Forbes that the CEO of a US-based cybersecurity company called Exodus Intelligence says India bought and likely weaponized its Windows zero-day research to spy on China and Pakistan. Where's my sound file? So, a U.S. cybersecurity company says India weaponized a Windows zero-day research to spy on China and Pakistan. A company's tech was abused by the Indian government amidst warnings Americans are contributing to a spyware industry already under fire for being out of control. But Windows has a lot of zero-day vulnerabilities. So I'm not sure.
We should just give up on security, to be honest.
It says earlier this year, researchers at Russian cybersecurity firm Kaspersky witnessed a cyber espionage campaign targeting Microsoft Windows PCs at government and telecom entities in China and Pakistan. They began in June 2020 and continued through April 2021. What piqued the researchers' interest was the hacking software used by the digital spies, whom Kaspersky had dubbed Bitter APT, a pseudonym for an unspecified government agency. Aspects of the code looked like some the Moscow antivirus provider had previously seen and attributed to a company it gave the acronym MOSES. MOSES, says Kaspersky, was a mysterious provider of hacking tech known as a zero-day exploit broker, which means they collect zero-day exploits and sell them, because there's a lot in the Microsoft world. Such companies operate in a niche market within the $130 billion overall cybersecurity industry, creating software or exploits that can hack into computers via unpatched vulnerabilities known as 0 days. The term comes from the fact that developers have 0 days to fix the problem before it's publicly known. They act like super-powered lockpicks, finding loopholes in operating systems or apps to allow a hacker or spy to break into a target's digital lives. So rare are such exploits that they can fetch upwards of 2 million each. Well, that's true in many devices, but in Windows, they're pretty common. Buyers wielding them have the power to either protect themselves from those who might have knowledge of the relevant 0 day or to inflict massive damage on others. For instance, attackers used at least one 0 day in an infamous 2020 attack on $2.5 billion market cap software provider SolarWinds and many of its customers, from U.S. government departments to tech giants like Cisco and Microsoft. The attacks cost SolarWinds at least $18 million, with warnings that the overall figure, continuing the cost for SolarWinds customers who are also compromised, could get into the tens of billions. Sometimes American companies aren't the victims, but the ones fueling costly digital espionage. Moses' real identity, Forbes has learned, is an Austin, Texas company called Exodus Intelligence, according to two sources with knowledge of Kaspersky's research. And Bitter APT, the Moses customer, is India, added one source. Little known outside of cybersecurity and intelligence worlds over the last 10 years, Exodus from India has made a name for itself with a Time magazine cover story and the leak of a tool that law enforcement used to hack the anonymizing browser Tor to ensnare child predators. It also claims partnership with the Defense Department's research agency DARPA and major tech firms like Cisco and Fortinet, a $2.6 billion cybersecurity outfit. They're significant because the size of the market is relatively small, and blah, 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 blah. Exodus, when asked by Five Eyes countries, an alliance of intelligence sharing countries that includes the UK, US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, or their allies, will provide both information on 0 day vulnerability and software required to exploit it. But its main product is akin to Facebook newsfeed of software vulnerabilities, sans exploits, for up to $250,000 a year. It's marketed primarily as a tool for defenders, but customers can do what they want with the information on those Exodus 0 days, ones that typically cover the most popular operating systems, blah, blah, blah. So it's India. I would not be involved in this company at all if we were, for example, working with the Saudis. Okay. Wow. Super. I'm scrolling through the article, and it's quite a very long book indeed. Yeah.
So Tyler, did I hear you right that there's like a subscription you can get to basically figure out so it's like a Facebook for
$250,000 a year. Keeps you up to date on all of the known 0 day vulnerabilities.
So you could purchase this service to
Correct.
harden your own defenses.
But it doesn't give you the